Hi, good morning. And today is the 4th of November 2021. I think it will take people by surprise that we've actually started the webinar 7 minutes early. And I sort of apologize for that. But in fact, there's such a busy day here at ZP today that I generally have to start early and finish early. But of course, this video is, or this webinar is recorded. So hopefully you can catch it online. Let's say in a bit. So what I want to do is I want to say I apologize for starting early. I also realize that there's been a time zone shift as well, and it might catch many of you out because in the UK at the moment we've sort of changed, the clocks have changed because of we're officially going into winter. But that said, apologies from me to you starting early today, but as I say, just so much is going on today, we have to start early. And also, if you got caught up by the time zone shift as well, my apologies for that as well. So the first thing I want to do is just bring up the slide and say welcome to the ZP Developer Zone. We run the ZP Developer Zone really as a, as a service to the community and our community. I was very intrigued because this week we've had some inquiries that have come through from a group that's much more sort of, I feel, orientated towards not so much the science, but the application and the use of biosensors for people's wellness. So some of the inquiries this week have actually come through from academic teams that are much more, I don't know if I can say arts orientated, but they do feel to be more arts orientated. And I think that's actually super healthy for the world of biosensors. If we're going to talk about wearable biosensors, then these wearable biosensors do have to be, they have to be beautiful, they have to be comfortable, they have to be adoptable, and they can't look like medical products all of the time. So it is nice to have this kind of injection into the ZP Developer Zone of these people with a sort of, a different perspective. So thank you for joining. So the ZP Developer Zone, I am going to talk about the ZP Academy a little bit today because I think as people join the ZP Developer Zone, sometimes they're going to need help on actually just understanding the core science of what we do at, let's say, at the ZP Developer Zone. So the Academy is important. We have this webinar. So as I say, my apologies, this webinar started 5 minutes early today, and because of the time zone difference, I suspect that will also catch people out. So my apologies for that. We're very collaborative at the ZP Developer Zone. So I've been having we've been having a spate of members recently. And if I kind of spot that somebody has, started their PhD or is in their PhD, then I do offer that we can collaborate with them on that. We do offer jobs. I'm going to be going to our UK facilities today, and I will actually be meeting a ZP Developer Zone member who's joined ZP, so that will be exciting. And of course, we have our ZP Developer Zone where we have our forum, and thank you for posting questions. And I'm realizing that we are going to go ahead and do this workshop. I know I've talked about this workshop a lot in the past, but we are going to hold it. I also want to just say thank you to Ivran. Ivran, if you're wondering why we started early, it's such a busy day today, so we have started early, and you obviously knew there was a time zone change in the UK, so you didn't get caught out with it. So nice to see you this morning, Ivran. Now what I want to do is the ZP Developer Zone webinars are really to make sure that we can answer the questions of our ZP Developer Zone members. And we had some inquiries come in this week. It said, I'm interested in purchasing some materials to start fabricating my own screen printed electrodes that are compatible with the EasyFlex wearable sensor, and I'm wondering which silver chloride format would be best. And they're correct that we have several formats put on the website. We have a printing format, a paintable format, and a thinner format. Now, the reason that we have this, and just for your interest, this is the EasyFlex. I think it was the world's first commercially available sort of wearable biosensor platform. And what the inquirer is asking about is that we have silver chloride ink that's printable, paintable, and we also have thinner. Now, the reason that we have the paintable silver chloride is because I think a lot of people, they want to try something out and they think that in order to try something out, they have to kind of get something screen printed. But when you get something screen printed, first of all, you have to have a screen printer. That's okay. People can get those. Then they have to make masks. Then they have to buy a lot of inks. Then they have to do a lot of process optimization, and the idea itself might not actually work. And that's so what I encourage people to do is actually don't immediately start screen printing. I actually say no. Just get some silver chloride ink or some carbon ink or some gold ink, which we have on our web store, and literally try it with a paintbrush. Paint out what you want to do. We do have the curing temperatures on the website, and I say paint it and try it, and if it looks promising, then invest time in, maybe making some screen printed electrodes or purchasing some ones. But don't just jump into screen printing. I think it is better to take a more, dare I say, arts and crafts approach when first trying out an idea. So that's just sort of advice from me, and this is something I've done within my own career. So my advice is, if somebody's got a new idea, then I would say get the paintable silver chloride. And the reason we sell the thinner is because sometimes, it sounds a bit ridiculous, but when you're painting, you kind of leave the top off and the ink gets a bit thicker. You need to thin it down a little bit. Or you're trying to paint something and the ink's a bit too viscous, a bit too thick, so you need to thin it down a bit. So it's literally the solvent to help thin down the ink. So if you're starting to make wearable sensors and you want to try out some ideas, then my advice is get the silver chloride paintable format and get the thinner. So literally it's like painting with paints, with any other kind of paint, and the thinner is just to kind of dilute it down a little bit. I know I'm sort of stating the obvious there, but I just want to kind of explain, why do we have that? Once you've done, let's say, painting of electrodes and you kind of think, no, this is working, then I would suggest you can start going to screen printing. But like I say, screen printing, it's several months of work before you get things that are you can sort of really use. You have to make the screens, you have to print them, you have to sort of sort out all the little problems. So painting is my advice for the first start. We're actually coming up to 8 o'clock now, so I just want to give people a quick heads up that if you've joined now, my apologies that we started early. As I say, there was a really busy day at ZP today, and I literally have to start and finish early, so my apologies for that. Now, a second part of the inquiry was this person, or this group is interested in, they had some questions, which is about transportation. So the questions were, we would like to know the transportation and storage requirements for the carbon and silver chloride paintable inks and the carbon ink. So transportation, we generally transport sort of by courier, and it generally takes about 3 days. I say here, keep the silver chloride in the dark. I mean, this is obvious to many of you scientists, but silver chloride is actually, I think it's the material that they used to use in a lot of old black and white photography. So when you see black and white photography, it's often silver salts, and silver salts can be quite photoactive. So my suggestion is, if you do get these carbon and these silver chloride inks, keep them cool, keep them dry, and keep them in the dark. I say keep them cool. I'm not necessarily saying keep them in the fridge, because when you keep things in the fridge, then you can end up changing the solubility of materials, and things can precipitate out of solution. So I say, when I say keep it cool, keep it at room temperature or less. You don't want to keep it at 30-40 degrees, because there's solvents in here. These solvents can evaporate, and once the solvents start evaporating, then the inks become thicker. You can't paint them, you can't print them. So keep them cool, keep them dry. I mean, it's always good to keep excess moisture out of these kind of products. These products are very sort of organic based, so it is a good idea to keep humidity out of them. And as I just said, silver salts in particular were used in photography, and you expose silver salts to light, and I think they generally sort of start darkening on you. So it's a good idea to keep these sort of photoactive silver type salts out of the sunlight, so keep them in a dark place. They're very concerned about how to create their own biosensors, and we do have some videos about that. We have some videos around how to activate an electrode to make it a glucose sensor, and we also have some videos about how to add barrier layers. Now, barrier layers have been covered in quite a few of our webinars, and I'll also refer to the ZP Academy in a bit. But a barrier layer, we often use it in biosensing. If you've got an enzyme, you put an enzyme on an electrode, it has a certain amount of activity. But if you've got something like too much glucose can reach that enzyme and you will lose linearity. So you will only have a certain signal versus concentration, and then it will stop responding because it's basically too much glucose. And so we add these barrier layers to block the excess glucose. That being said, if somebody was making a wearable sensor and they were trying to do it in something like sweat, I really suspect that the glucose is actually quite a low concentration, that you would never reach something like 5 millimolar or 90 milligrams per deciliter. So you probably didn't need the barrier layer so much in that application, but that's just me thinking off the top of my head. If you were trying to make a glucose sensor for blood or interstitial fluid and you didn't use a barrier layer, you probably find that you have good linearity from 1 millimolar to 2 millimolar, 3, 4, 5-ish, you'd still get it. And then beyond 5, you would start finding the linearity was not increasing at the same rate, and it was starting to plateau. At about 10 millimolar, you probably would have plateaued. Now, in this particular case, they're asking, how do we make a glucose sensor? We have a couple of videos, and I'll give you some links to it. I suggest, well, first of all, you have to have the activation solution because that contains the enzyme. You might not need the barrier layer. You're probably worth getting the barrier layer so you can experiment with it. The other thing that the barrier layer might do for you is it's essentially a sort of an inert polymer that goes over the top of the electrode. So you could argue that it's some way protecting the electrode as well. You're not just exposing the enzyme to the environment. So maybe you would use it more for its protection capabilities rather than blocking glucose. I just want to say thank you to Ivran this morning, because I realised it's just me and you this morning, Ivran. This time shift, it happens. Every time it happens, it always catches everyone out. So, but nice to see you again. Now, they're also interested in making things like sodium sensors. So we do have a video on our website about how to make an ammonium sensor, but I just want to say it's really the same thing. Ivran will know this. He attends quite regularly. Aftab, who attends regularly, will know this. Ali, who attends regularly, will know this. But the glucose sensor is an amperometric sensor, and a sodium sensor is a potentiometric sensor. And if you're not sure of the difference, don't worry. I would say, look, there's a couple of courses on the ZP Academy that are for free, and that will help answer those questions. Hey Aftab, I just saw you come online, and I just want to say morning. And we started early this morning because I literally have to go to some meetings, and I had to start early. And because Aftab, you'll just be interested, I'm actually going to some farms with the nitrate sensor. So I literally have to shoot off quite early this morning, so my apologies for starting early, but nice to see you. These are just a couple of links. If you're interested in making a glucose sensor, then we have a video under this link, and I have already put these links in the comments section or the description below. And the same for if you want to make a sodium sensor, then we do have a video on how to make an ammonium sensor, and just watch that video. It's quite straightforward. All you need is, now the group that's asking this question, I think, like I said, I think they actually have quite an arts background, let's say, and I think, you just need fine control of a pipette in order to do this kind of work. It's not that hard, let's say. Slightly change the topic now. So we're getting inquiries that say, I want to make a sodium sensor. So we do have a sodium sensing formulation. And there's a link for it. The next part of the inquiry, which hasn't been asked yet, is how do I test these things? So I just want to kind of say that we do have an application zone. And in that application zone, I've just highlighted all the ion selective electrode tests. When you look at these ion selective electrode tests, potassium pH is there, sodium is there, ammonium is there. And I've highlighted the sodium sensor because that's what they're particularly interested in. you're going to find that all these tests are all really quite similar, because they're all ion selective electrodes, they're all using potentiometry to do it, so they're all very similar. So having decided to make a sodium sensor, for example, you can find the solution on our website. You can watch that video about the ammonium sensor and how to actually do it. And then when you've got a question about how do I actually test it, you can watch these videos. There's a video with Sol running in it, one with Anna in it, and one with one of our engineers, Andre in it. And just lastly, there's also a video about how to measure a glucose sensor in there as well, and that's amperometric. So it's probably worth looking at the amperometric video for glucose and also contrasting it with the potentiometric for sodium, for example. And as I say, I've already put the links in the comments section. Now lastly, I'm going to just touch on the ZP Academy. I don't often re-show this slide, but I did want to show it because as we get new members and I start talking about potentiometric sensors and ion selective electrodes, and I start talking about amperometric sensors, I think it's worth reminding some of the new members, or telling the new members, that we have the ZP Academy. We have a free course on Introduction to Biosensors, and we have a free course on electrochemical techniques for biosensor developers. I just want to finish with a sort of summary. So I apologize, it's only 9 minutes past 8 here in the UK, but I do have to jump into a car in about 6 minutes, so my apologies for going quick today. But I do want to say thank you to Aftab, who was one of the attendees this week. We did a webinar with IIT Bombay. It was very well attended. Aftab was one of the attendees there, so thank you for attending. So let me finish off by saying thank you for the inquiry about the silver chloride inks. I always suggest painting electrodes before you start screen printing electrodes. It's quicker to paint and fail and find that the idea is not working than it is to set up screens and start screen printing. So if you want to make a new type of wearable and you want to try out some new materials like a fabric or polymer, get the paintable format silver chloride, for example, and get the thinner. Because it's like any painting job. Sometimes you want to thin the paint up a bit, so you will need the thinner. And then in terms of transportation, we transport to the US, for example, all the time. It generally takes about 3 days. We will ship it in essentially a polystyrene box with some ice packs in it. So keep it cool, keep it dry, and keep it in a dark place. Like I say, silver chloride it's a silver salt. Silver salts are photoactive, so keep them sort of shielded. And then when you're not sure about how to make those electrodes, we do have a couple of videos showing really, as long as you've got pipettes and good sort of steady hands, then you should be completely fine. So I am going to sort of say thank you to Ivan this morning, and thank you for Aftab. This video will be online later on. I do have to run. Unfortunately, I've got to jump in a car in about 4 minutes. So thank you very much, guys, and I hope this helps the inquirers. And yeah, take care, and I will see you soon. All right, thank you. I'll just say cheers.